Hey, everybody. We're live with the Working Fans Podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about AEW Wrestledream, a show I watched. I think Adam watched most of, and saw most of, and Monday Night Raw, a show I watched, and Adam didn't really see much of it all. And but we're still going to talk about it because there's some interesting stuff that happened, and we're also going to compare Kerry Von Erich to Bobby Lashley, a matchup I know you were thinking about for years and years in your life.
Two of the greatest physiques and natural athletes in the history of wrestling.
Natural indeed. Let me work on sharing this right now. Before we get started, AEW Wrestledream, we will kick it off with that. Boom. AEW Wrestledream. Let's talk about it.
Do you feel they delivered?
Yeah. I mean, it's typical AEW pay-per-views. They're all really good wrestling shows. I never really have a lot of complaints with that. Without even getting to my notes yet, I can't help but say, like, the things that stick out were like Darby Allin and Moxley, and the crazy match that they had. And also, like, Samoa Joe turning heel. That was also big. But go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I think the women really stood out on that show also. I mean, you're talking about Toni Storm and Chris Statlander delivering on everything that was promised in this first-time one-on-one match.
One of the things that kicked off the pre-show, they had FTR versus Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, Jet Speed. And it was interesting. They went from the pre-show to the pay-per-view. And I thought that's kind of cool in the sense that should happen more often once in a while because there's no reason to think like matches can't bleed into, the show.
But they did scare the hell out of the wrestlers with the pyro.
Yeah, perhaps they did. All right, let's look at some of these matches. Jamie Hayter beat Tekla. Good matchup. I don't think anything really to report here.
Good matchup. They beat the living hell out of each other. That was a hell of a matchup with Tekla really coming across strong in the match, even in the loss. And quite frankly, Jamie Hayter keeping her power and really looking fantastic.
You liked it more than I did. That's fair. Jurassic Express defeated the Young Bucks. I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Good victory for Jurassic Express. Good to see them back on track. Randy Oscar, do you guys have problem watching the show with Amazon? Guys have problems watching the show with Amazon Prime. Didn't watch it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, no problems whatsoever. We didn't watch it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we found other ways to watch it. Continuing on. All right, the Hurt Syndicate defeated the Demand. I thought this was fun and entertaining. Cool to see, MVP out here wrestling again. Shelton Benjamin, I just think, always comes off looking like a star here, too. Bobby Lashley is a star and should probably wrestle for the world title at some point. But I like the fact that this sets up a great trios feud that we're possibly going to see later.
Well, when half of your team, quite frankly, is able to be compared to the legendary Kerry Von Erich, that's saying something for your team.
That's a much later segment. But anyway, Kyle Fletcher defeats Mark Briscoe. These two got great chemistry together. Mark Briscoe kind of reminds me of a modern-day Mick Foley sometimes, with the bang-bang elbow and everything. I just love it. But, yeah, any thoughts on that match?
Yeah, the right person went over. MJF is your future star. Mark Briscoe is a current very good wrestler who is a star also. I think they went in the right direction with it, giving some heat back to Kyle Fletcher. Sorry, not MJF. Giving some of the heat back to him and allowing him to be the present star that he is.
All right, we'll get to that comment in a bit. Chris Statlander defeated Timeless Toni Storm. You already said this was your favorite match tonight, huh?
It was. I thought they really delivered on it. I think that Toni Storm is so good in her character right now, and they've done a great job of adapting Chris Statlander out of her past. She was starting to get a little blurry in other aspects. Was she just the best friend of this wrestler? Was she in a feud with this wrestler? And they've really focused in on who she is as a wrestler now, and they're doing a great job.
Mercedes Moné comes out to take a little bit of Statlander's hype, and then she ends up basically challenging excuse me. want to see our faces for a little bit here. Mercedes Moné comes out and basically has an open challenge. And Mina Shakakara.
It was a little bit different than open challenge because she ended up it ended up being for both belts.
Right, but that was the idea. She wanted to fight somebody that she could win a title from.
Yeah, normally an open challenge is technically a chance for an up-and-coming star to come in and have a shot at a title that they wouldn't normally have a shot at. You actually had the Ring of Honor interim champion. If that's not the biggest belt you could go for.
Interim TV champion.
Sorry, interim TV champion. If that's not a giant belt that you can go for, my goodness.
Yes. Mercedes continued to collect belts. She's even collected more since then.
When's she going to defend the Owen Hart belt?
How's she going to lose all these belts eventually? That's what I want to know. How does that work?
Ultimo Dragon's coming for her.
Bandito and Brody King. Brodito defeat Okada and Takeshita. That was a great match. I almost kind of hoped that Takeshita and Okada was going to win, and then we'd see them fight a little bit afterwards. But I liked the match.
I enjoyed the spot with what looked like Okada was flipping off the opponent, and then managed to actually be flipping off Takeshita, and Takeshita taking the middle finger from him. And I thought it was very entertaining.
All right, before we get to this next one, let's
answer a lot of questions up there.
Does Tony and Mina win the tag titles? That's actually not a bad idea. That could be a direction we go in. Producer Joe looks jacked tonight. She has 12 champions. Yes, she does.
Mercedes. I can't believe they're confusing you with Producer Joe.
Yeah, I know. Weird. Continuing on, Hangman Page defeated Samoa Joe. The big story here is afterwards, Joe goes heel, and so does the whole group. The Ops, Shibata, Will Hobbs. Let's make sure we're all going to beat that ass. And I got to tell you, I like the match, but I like the ending even more.
So this, to me, now we have multiple groups that are just ass-kicking heels. Literally, we have the Ops, the Death Riders. We've got what the hell does Ricochet call his group there?
The Demand?
Yeah, the Demand. You now have literally the Hurt Syndicate, which I guess are technically baby faces, but you have multiple giant men factions that just kick ass. What happens when they all run into each other?
And getting back to this comment, do they win the trios titles on Wednesday? Or speaking of the Hurt Syndicate, I think being that the Ops just turned heel, I wouldn't just expect them to drop the titles just yet. That being said, this is the team I would expect them to eventually drop the titles to. So I'm kind of curious what they end up doing. I think this might be a rare situation where we get some kind of schmaz or something, but we'll see.
How do you feel about MVP working more? I think that the way they've built MVP, to me, they've built him as the older guy. And as we know, he's not actually that much older than them.
Yeah. He's kind of like the player coach, like he's a coach kind of for them. But yeah, you're right, which is kind of ridiculous. Like, I love MVP. He's a legit badass. And but he ain't coached Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley on shit.
Oh, absolutely not.
Unless it's personality and charisma, then he probably is the most charismatic out of the group.
Oh, he's definitely the most charismatic of the group, with obviously Shelton being very close behind him.
Yeah. Main event, Darby Allin in the main event versus Jon Moxley. I Quit match. Moxley beat the shit out of Darby. I guess it was interesting because they had the Missouri commission there, and Missouri is one of the states that actually has a commission. And Matt Cardona said before he wasn't allowed to hit somebody with his title in Missouri. So they got around things. They did a lot of stuff. Well, Darby got drowned for a little bit, waterboarded maybe. I don't know what. But a lot of violence in the end. We saw Old Man Sting come out, and he looked great. I'm calling him Old Man Sting because he looked old, but he also looked really cool. He was the way he broke the aquarium with the bat, and drove everybody away, and then gave the bat to Darby, and then Darby, of course, used the Scorpion Deathlock in the end to get the submission win. I like the story. I
like the white hair look. I think he looks almost like back in the day, one of the old Kung Fu characters, or Monchichi, if you remember those, if you're old enough to remember those. By the way, I wanted to mention something from the match before this. Bobby Lashley is 1 month older than I am. That's fucked up. I mean, 1 month younger than I am. Sorry.
We could get to Bobby Lashley, but he's in our main segment.
Yeah, we'll talk about
We'll talk about Bobby Lashley later. So to answer Randy's question, does Darby Allin get a title shot soon? I don't know about soon because you got Joe potentially getting another title shot. MJF could be around. But yeah, I mean, eventually I think at this point, AEW will have to put the title on Darby Allin at some point, I think, because he is Mr. AEW. He literally put the AEW flag on Mount Everest. Like, this guy's the heart and soul. What I love is that Sting has become so entwined in this guy's story. Like, Sting has retired, but Sting, like this hero, like this old Cape Crusader, like old Batman, basically comes out once in a while and makes sure that everything is even and fair.
And here's the thing. Sting is keeping his word. He said he would never wrestle again.
Yeah.
He is not wrestling matches. He's not coming back to do a match. He's coming back to stick up for a friend and a protege. So I think it makes sense, and I enjoyed the main event. It was my second favorite match of the night.
All right. Let's go to a show you didn't get to watch it all. Somebody was sleepy last night. WWE Raw. He had to work some extra hours. I bet you, I want to bet you before we even get started, when because you left in the opening segment, which we found out basically Braun Breaker had the title and Rollins is going to be stripped because he's injured and they had a battle royal. And you must have went to bed thinking Braun Breaker was going to win that battle royal, right? Because that's what I was believing.
Yeah, I was a little shocked when I woke up and read about it. And I read that Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, neither one of them were allowed in the battle royal. Yes. Because apparently Adam Pearce, for the first time since he was Scrap Daddy, has grown a spine.
And I'm not going to go through all the Raw results. We're going to go to some highlights here. But let's talk about it. They kicked off as soon as you went to bed. AJ Styles got another title. He's a tag champion now with Dragon Lee.
Well, it makes sense.
That's a great team.
Good buddies. It makes sense to pair them up together. No, I love that team. Very athletic. Dragon Lee is majorly underutilized in the promotion. He actually has a good personality, not bad on the mic, and hopefully this will also end up in a push for both of them.
We'll get to that, Randy. We'll get to who we think is going to win the title at Saturday's main event. Other things that happened on this show. Dominic Mysterio kept the title from Rusev. Again, I know AJ didn't get to see this. I don't know if you saw it, but Dominic grabs a hammer, and then Rusev caught the hammer. Ref takes the hammer away, and then Dom ends up, or maybe it was the title. I don't know. Basically, Dom is doing some more lie, cheating, stealing, and finding ways to sneak away and get the win.
It was a hammer and a low blow.
A hammer and a low blow. That's right. It was the low blow. Yeah, and then he put the hammer back in.
And I'm the one who didn't watch it.
All right, I'm old. What do you want? Bottom line is Dom is, he's getting quite the reaction. And even though he's a heel, he's still getting they're building him as a heel still, though.
Yeah, he is not going to be a heel for long. People are starting to love him the way that they loved Eddie. People cheer for him. If you listen to the crowd does cheer for him.
Becky Lynch got disqualified in her match with Maxine. So Maxine, they continued to build this up a little bit too. So Maxine, even though Becky didn't lay out Maxine too, I do want to point out they could just let this go from there. But I feel like they left it open where Maxine could get another title shot down the road. I think the bigger thing I thought with Becky Lynch was that she did get in Paul Heyman's face. And she said, "Don't worry, you're just a peasant. He's not coming after. Steph's not coming after you, but you're going to wish he did. He's just going to kill all the people you love." So Becky, serious, but at the end, does it matter? I think it's just more of an exit for those two at this point.
I think it's just an exit. That's you have to do something. Becky can't just ignore it. Can't ignore the situation being on the same show. And you just had to do something to exit the situation so that you didn't have to really deal with the storyline. So
Randy wants to know, do we get Dom versus Finn? Yeah, I think at some point that has to happen.
You have to.
Yeah.
And hopefully Finn will win.
There was also a part 2 where Braun Breaker questioned Paul Heyman as to why they're not in the battle or getting title shots. And Paul, doing what he does, brought up the history of Brock Lesnar and how nobody wanted here. He got a title shot. Nobody wanted CM Punk. He got 400-something days as champion. And, the guys are like, all right, we got a lot to learn. And, we got a lot of people to hurt, too. And Bronson Reed's like, yeah, me too. So they're going to hurt people, just like the Hurt Syndicate. And it'll be fun to watch. I like Bronson Reed. I like Braun Breaker. I like what they're doing with these two.
How long before Braun Breaker is the greatest Steiner of all time?
I think very possible he's going to walk out with a world title at WrestleMania this year. Probably not Cody's belt, but he will be a world champion, is my guess.
Yeah, and to me, that puts him, because let's face it, Scott, as much as we love him, and the Steiner brothers, obviously one of the greatest tag teams, if not arguably the greatest tag team of all time. They're so phenomenal as a pair, but as singles wrestlers, to me, Scott's world championships in WCW, because of the time period he won them, don't add up to a WWE championship right now.
Yeah, quality competition and the profile of the company at the time. I don't think you're going to take over Scott Steiner with just one, but yeah, he'll be there. He's going to be the greatest Steiner of all time. Let's get to this battle royal. I thought it was interesting. I read I was listening to Wrestling Observer, and they were talking about the lack of depth a little bit here, that you knew it pretty much had to be Jey Uso or LA Knight that was going to win this. Now, I don't totally agree with that, because it was a Saturday night's main event, and although Jey Uso and LA Knight are the only two I thought could beat Punk in this situation, I did think they might give it to AJ Styles, because that would have been a cool match, even though we know Punk would have won. And I think Dom Mysterio was also a legit chance at one point in my mind, because that would be fun, but also, again, they're not going to give Dom every title. So.
If they didn't both win earlier in the night, then I think that was definitely a possibility. But with AJ winning the tag titles earlier in the night, it just doesn't make a lot of logical sense for him to also have the shot at.
I could see Braun and Bronson winning the tag titles.
Oh, absolutely. Why would you not be able to see that?
But in the end, at the Battle Royal, it got down to Jey Uso eliminating Jimmy and LA Knight. And Jimmy had saved Jey a few times in this Battle Royal, so there is a story there. And but, at the end, Jey didn't hesitate to dump Jimmy with LA Knight. That led to Dom trying to sneak in. Unfortunately, Dom did not, was not successful. Jey Uso gets the win. Jey Uso wins the Battle Royal. He faces off with CM Punk at the end of this. And we got Jey Uso versus CM Punk for the vacant world title at this next Saturday night's main event. I think it's a lot more interesting. You want me to predict first?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, I think we got to go CM Punk here, because I think there's a story brewing with Jey and Jimmy, and, right there. So I think Punk will end up with this title now, but for how long? Maybe he holds it on to WrestleMania? I don't know.
Now, isn't it possible that Jey actually wins because of the story with Jimmy, and now at the Royal Rumble, you've got Jey versus Jimmy for the World Championship?
I'm not 100% sold that Punk is going to walk out. I think that these guys have been built as even stars, and because this title was vacated by Seth, I don't really know where they're going. I thought they just would have gone to Braun Breaker right now, but they obviously want to hold off for that, which I'm not upset about. I get that idea. But you didn't make a prediction, though.
I did not make a prediction. I was about to.
Yeah. What do you think? Gun to your head. What do you think?
Gun to my head. I think that it's Punk wins here, and I think you get Punk versus Braun Breaker after Braun Breaker wins the Royal Rumble. I think he gets a shot at Punk at WrestleMania for the World Championship.
I agree, and then Seth will be back at some point probably.
And then for SummerSlam, you can get Seth versus, because that'll be about the time that he'll come back from a shoulder rotator cuff surgery. Awesome. SummerSlam, you got Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins for the World Championship.
All right, that's enough of this current wrestling.
Let's get to the important stuff.
Let's talk about our comparison of the show. Kerry Von Erich in his prime versus Bobby Lashley. Who is a better overall professional wrestler? I just want to point out, whenever I do these pictures too, I always make sure not to show the grapefruit Kerry Von Erich had sticking in his
This has got to be Producer Joe.
Producer Joe out
there.
He
loves grapefruit.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, grapefruit's healthy for you.
Now, Dave, if people want to actually, I don't hear myself. Sorry. If people want to actually get into this comparison, where can they do that after we're done with this?
Oh, I have a YouTube short, and it's right on the channel. So go feel free to check it out. Kerry Von Erich versus Bobby Lashley. It's in our playlist of shorts. And we're also going to probably drop a long video now that we're doing this at some point too. So
because we're going to argue this out, but quite frankly, we would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yes. So I got a lot of feedback on this, and I thought majority of people thought Kerry was the better wrestler. And I think me and AJ are going to disagree with that. I think we're both going to be on the same page here, but I will see. When you talk charisma and you talk about having a connection with the fans, I can see Kerry in his prime might having that edge. But stylistically, I think it's a bad matchup for Kerry because one of the things Kerry's really good at is strength and power. He doesn't have that over Bobby Lashley. Pure wrestling ability. Bobby's a great amateur wrestler, so he doesn't have that over Kerry.
Well, let's first of all be clear what we're actually debating here.
In-ring talent, and we can throw in mic skills and stuff like that.
Are we talking about greatest career? Or are we talking?
No, greatest pro wrestler. We'll talk career in a second. We can go to that too. I like to talk career too. So let's just start off with who's the better all-around wrestler, and we'll take in look, mic skills, presence, and obviously in-ring ability.
So I put a lot of thought into this because, we were going to talk about it today. And some things I've changed my mind on, some things I'm still feel the same about. Bobby Lashley, obviously hands down the best wrestler out of the two of them. His MMA background, wrestling in the Army, the man's just a phenomenal. Now, that being said, Kerry was a fantastic athlete himself, a discus, world-class discus, track star in Texas. But I think that Kerry was actually better, believe it or not, to me, on drawing emotion out in an interview. I love Bobby Lashley. Lashley, let's hurt people. Yeah, hurt people. And he's funny in a dry way. But Kerry connected with people very emotionally and very visceral in his regional promotion and even when he came to the WWE. So that's an interesting place to really draw the comparison with the two.
And another thing you can say for Kerry fans out there, too, and by the way, I'm a bigger Kerry fan. Nothing against Bobby. I love the Von Erichs. I grew up on them. Kerry was one of my favorite Von Erichs for the simple fact when I was a kid, I found out he beat Ric Flair for the NWA World title, and I didn't like Flair, who was a heel at the time, so I thought, how cool is that? I want to see more of this guy. Kerry did have an ability to connect with the fans. The Von Erichs were like the Beatles in Texas. It's not too much hype to say that. It was absolutely insanity in Denton, Texas, in particular. They're probably gods among these people.
For our younger fans, if you're not overly familiar with the Von Erichs, do yourself a favor. Do a deep dive on it because you're going to hear us talking and you're not going to truly understand what the Von Erichs meant to Texas wrestling if you don't do a deep dive on it. They were huge.
Absolutely. So, and also carry the fact that, he had his demons, but the fact he was even able to wrestle on one leg, and a lot of us didn't know. We just thought Kerry slowed down. Like, that's incredible. But in the end, I got to say Bobby Lashley's a better wrestler. Career-wise is very interesting. I think this is where you're going to pick Kerry. I'm still sticking with Bobby for a couple reasons. Bobby was in that famous Billionaires match with Vince McMahon and Donald Trump. Bobby's been a couple-time WWE World Champion now. He holds a victory over Brock Lesnar. He's been a champ at AEW with the tag titles. I don't think we've seen the most of what Bobby's capable of AEW yet, but we certainly could. But again, Kerry was an NWA World Champion, although it was a short reign, and he was an Intercontinental Champion. But also, Kerry was a champion back when the titles didn't change hand every month.
It's longer than Victor Jokova. So my opinion is that I actually agree with you. Bobby Lashley had the better all-around career. Yeah. To me, Bobby Lashley is dedication. He's endurance through his career, and he's a model of professionalism. But that being said, Kerry Von Erich, to me, is the greater story. Farm boy, athlete, Texas son, grows up, lives well, does right by his family, wins the world title when his brother dies tragically. He beats one of the greatest, if not the greatest world champion of all time, then has a horrible motorcycle accident, loses his foot, wrestles with one wooden foot, makes it all the way back to the WWE to win the Intercontinental title, which, by the way, was considered the workman's title at that time. he was wrestling guys like Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, Bret Hart. These are guys that are considered the greatest workers of all time, and he was keeping pace with them. And then, unfortunately, he gets hooked on drugs, painkillers, God knows what, ends up tragically killing himself. If this is not one of the greatest stories, if not tragic stories, but greatest stories in wrestling, then I don't know what is.
All right. Well, in the end, I think we felt like Bobby Lashley just kind of edged him out in either category, but there's certainly a lot of stuff where Kerry does get the advantage on Bobby. And in the end,
I'll tell you what, the physiques is not. I thought when you look at those physiques next to each other, holy shit!
Yeah, Kerry was a monster at one point with his physique. It's arguable that he had the best physique in wrestling at one point. But guys, we appreciate you listening to us today. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and maybe we'll have something for you on Friday, too. Stick around.